What's going on, Central? We are back again this week. This is our last week
Yes. 8 weeks.
doing this podcast for this series. You know, to celebrate, I actually have something for us.
Oh boy.
I got some balloons.
Oh my
that
gosh.
we can blow up. You know, we need to.
Oh my gosh.
We need to.
We're supposed to blow this up right now?
Yeah, why not? Let's go. Yeah, last one. Let's go. We did it. Okay, we're excited just to
I had
end
no clue
this.
that was going to happen. Just so everybody
you
knows.
know,
All right.
just trying to keep things fun, keep us on our toes. Well, hey, church, we're excited to be talking with you this week about First Peter. Just going through our series, we're wrapping it up this weekend. But before we wrap it up, let's take a step back. Last Sunday, we talked about persecution throughout some of that First Peter. And we were talking about this earlier, you know, and even in your message, you referenced a lot of like, hey, where we're at now in America in this time phrase, it looks a lot different than maybe it did in the Bible times, and then more so in other countries too. Do you want to hit on that a little bit?
Yeah, you know, obviously, I think that so much of chapter 4, we talked about it a little bit Sunday, is suffering. And it honestly, in the New Testament, First Peter talks about suffering more than any other book. And it is hard. I do believe we live in a nation that, yes, there might be some things, some social unacceptance. We might get some pushback from time to time, but you know, in light of some of the stories and illustrations, if you didn't catch in on Sunday's message, I encourage you to check it out on the website or go to the app and listen, because, you know, I shared an illustrative point of a man by the name of Richard Warmbrand. And as I talk about like the physical torture that this guy went through for the cause of Christ, it's just unbelievable for me to think about that. You know, I went home last Wednesday having a rough copy of where I was headed with the sermon, and I told my wife, I'm like, I am just overwhelmed. Like, emotionally was just overwhelmed by the fact that, man, this man went through so much and stayed true to the Lord all along. So cool to see men like that, but being reminded that we have a lot of freedom to stand for what is right and true and not get pushed back the same way.
And I think too, like something that I took away a lot from this weekend was, you know, their suffering. You know, just to give somebody like Richard as an example, like his suffering was so great comparatively to some of my sufferings. Yeah. You know, not to minimize the things that we go through, but it's such a good perspective shifter of saying like, hey, this really probably isn't that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. So I think for me, that was a good kind of mental shift to kind of have that different perspective of, this could be crazy, a lot crazier than it is.
Yeah, and if you remember, as we came to the close in the message, the reminder was, yes, there's going to be suffering, but what we are then, the point of this, what's that mean for us? Being known, you know, he comes back there again, for doing good. Yes. Being known as the people, and you know, through all that, people that knew, you know, a guy like Richard that we talked about, they knew him for doing good. They knew him for being the one who had hope and the one who was constantly pointing people to Jesus. And I'm just thinking about like, we as the church, that's what we're called to do. We're supposed to be called to do good for the cause of Christ.
Absolutely.
So, good stuff.
And so as we're wrapping this up this weekend, this is kind of our last message here in First Peter. We're closing out the book. There's a bunch of different things in this that we can kind of go. If you read through the text, there's a lot. But what are some of the main things that we're going to hit on this weekend as we kind of close out our series? Yeah,
so chapter 5, right, it's kind of this harsh boom. Peter stops from talking about the suffering. Now he hones in on eldership and what eldership looks like, which great that worked out. We're having a congregational meeting on Sunday.
Did you plan that like that?
You know, I'd love to take full credit, but it kind of worked out how the scripture pulls that off. But, you know, Peter unpacks what an elder is to look like and the responsibility of that, and ultimately really looks at what the church is called to look like. That we all have expectations and responsibilities as members of the bride of Christ. And, you know, I've heard people say before, I love Jesus, but I'm not so sure about the church. And I'm just saying, look, you cannot be connected to the groom that is Christ without being connected to the bride that is His church.
Yeah.
And I think that right there teaches us that just as there are responsibilities and authorities of an elder, there are responsibilities and authorities of a member of a church, of a Christ follower, and we all have a part to play in this thing that is being the hands and feet of Christ to our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll be really good to kind of unpack that and give maybe some clear expectations of just us as a church family and, as a follower of Christ. I know that there's a pretty infamous scripture in there about standing firm because the enemy, the lion, is prowling around. And one of the versions that I read in it said, be well balanced and ready to go. And I just love that imagery just to be able to say, hey, again, connecting it back to that ending in chapter 4 of like, hey, this is what we should be known for. We should be seeking to do good. We should be seeking to stand firm and to stand fast for our faith.
Yeah, in light of all the things I think we are seeing in culture right now, some of it maybe in like really here in the very present. I know there's all kinds of conversation going around with some things that took place in the public sector of the Olympics. And what am I supposed to do? And this conversation of the devil prowling around like a roaring lion. And I think there's a lot. I won't give too much away right now. I don't start preaching the sermon to you, but
let's go.
I think it is important to know that clearly the devil is roaring around like a lion, looking for someone to devour. But the Scripture tells us that the gates of Hades will not prevail. Right? That the church is on the offense.
Absolutely.
And hell's on the defense.
We got to take it to him.
So,
absolutely. So, I'm excited. It's going to be a good weekend as we wrap this up. Church, thanks for joining, watching these every week. We hope that they've helped you, that they have maybe kind of spurred you to read a little bit more ahead and get in the Word more. We may be bringing this back. We don't know. We're just going to kind of play it by ear.
What do you think? Hey, drop that in the comments. Seriously, what would you like something like this to look like in your midweek? Is there questions, thoughts, answers, things that we've done that have been helpful to you? That's always helpful to know. So let us know.
Absolutely. Church, we'll see you on Sunday. Can't wait. Have a great week.